I am so glad you are here. I'm Liz. It's Magical Tuesday in my world. So let's talk about, should you do a love spell? How ethical is it to do a love spell? Oh, well, how do we want to handle love spells? Well, we've been helping folks with that here at Megas Books for a very, very, very long time. And we definitely have a few thoughts, all of us collectively. And the first one is, you see someone across a crowded room, you're at a party, and you want to go out with them. You find them attractive, you're single, you're available, you want to go out with them. Is the first thing you then do is go home and do a spell to manipulate them into asking you out? I'm going to argue maybe no. The first thing you should do is go over, introduce yourself, maybe say how you got an invite to the party and ask them how they know the folks hosting, and start talking to them, asking them questions, and just going through the normal ways of getting to know people that we all know and use. And if you're a little rusty, I am sure there are 50 tutorials, if not 50,000, somewhere on YouTube for you to find them. But if you decide to do that kind of love spell where you are manipulating that person right there to fall in love with you, I'm going to suggest that you might not want to do that. Because when you do magic, part of what you're doing is you're telling yourself, you're telling the universe, at least your version of the universe, how you think the universe and the world should run. Would you want the spell done on you by someone you weren't interested in going out with? That's the question to ask. It is one thing to decide to do a love spell on your relationship with your partner, and you can even ask them in advance, is it okay if I enhance our relationship with a little magic? It's quite another to do spells on seemingly a random stranger to con them, basically, into asking you out. I'm going to suggest you don't want to live in that world, because that's a world where you can't trust people, because you never know who's going to do that kind of spell to you. And it's a world in which you've said that manipulation is fair game, and therefore you can be manipulated. I'm going to say that's not a great ethical position to lead your life from. I would also point out, if you're going to do a love spell on someone that you saw across that room, that you don't know anything about them. You don't know if they're in a relationship, if they're available. You have no idea. And if you're going to convince them to throw over their current paramour, well, then they're not that faithful if you can do that with a magic spell, and maybe you don't want them as a partner if going forward, if you're looking for a more long-term arrangement. It's also, in my opinion, difficult to cast a spell on one specific other person, far more difficult than it is to cast a spell on yourself. A love spell on myself? Yes, you can cast a love spell on yourself. What would it look like? What would the goal be? Usually the goal is to make yourself more available for all kinds of relationships. And yes, that might mean you get a friend where you might have had a date, but friends are good too, and they're important too. So opening yourself up to meeting new people, opening yourself up to looking for positive relationships all around you, that is a form of magic that you can ethically do. Clearly, you've consented if you're doing it to yourself, and sets you up to meet someone that maybe wasn't the person you saw across the crowded room, but was someone who has been, quietly waiting in the wings for their opportunity to ask you out. And it turns out they're amazing, and you had no idea all along. So I think it's easier to cast a spell on oneself, especially if you're a beginner at this, than it is on someone else. And I think it's easier to cast a love spell that doesn't deliberately try to manipulate someone into behaviors they wouldn't have done without the spell. And also, if you're convinced that spell did manipulate them, then you never know how they truly feel about you, because you've manipulated them out of that thought process. So just a few random thoughts on the ethics of love magic, casting love spells. If you choose to, all the best with it. I'm just going to suggest the best love spell you can cast is one to open yourself up to new relationships of all kinds. Anyway, on behalf of myself and the rest of the crew here at Megas Books, thank you so much for tuning in, for being your best magical you. We love that about you. And of course, for doing the little social media magics you can do right here. I know you know what they are. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk about magic again next Tuesday. Blessed be.